Pay up your life insurance and put on your life jacket, because we're going up to Baker Lake and we're looking for Bigfoot. Coming up next on Encounters USA. Hello everyone, I'm Matthew Hines for Encounters USA. We are your one-stop podcast and YouTube channel for all things alien, Bigfoot, and Dogman. So relax, kick up your feet, grab one of your favorite beverages, and enjoy the show. Hello everybody and welcome to a special Encounters USA. Sitting in my office, well, at least my office for today. I got the boat ready, I've got all my equipment set up, and the last time that we were here, we had a lot worse weather than we have today, so it looks like it's going to be a great day. So a couple of things, the last time we were here had an issue with the motor, and so we got to check that out. Luckily, there's not a lot of wind today to push us back in case we end up rowing back. So the plan is we're going to go, the last time we were here, we headed south and crossed that way. This time we're going to go into the campgrounds, which are going to be deserted for at least another month and a half. And the idea is that if there's any scavenger activity, whatever, they're going to come in where there's no people before people come in, and they're going to come in and see what's available. Any kind of wildlife is going to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the nearest campsites or campgrounds, and I don't remember the exact name of them, but we are going to go hit those, and we're going to do some Bigfoot calls. We're going to put out some graham crackers, and we're going to see what comes in. Now, the last time we were out, we were testing out the gimbal, and we were testing out the FLIR, so we're going to continue with those tests. Now, the problem with the FLIR in a day like this is that your ambient temperature is going to be really, and as you can see, I'm kind of sweating now, and it's from all the work for putting up this boat. But the ambient temperature is going to be near body temperature. So it's going to be very hard during the day to try to detect somebody on the FLIR. So the idea here, at least today and for the next little while, is we're just trying to habituate, I guess that's the right word to use, we're trying to habituate any wildlife that is still here before the campers come to this craft. Because it doesn't look like any boat, it doesn't sound like any boat, and so we're trying to inspire curiosity. So we're going to bring some graham crackers with us, we're going to leave some treats, and we're going to blast the Bigfoot calls, try to call them in, because we don't really need to get like video of them or anything like that. What we want to do is make them aware who we are, what we drive, and when they're around and we're around, like during the summer, we want them to feel comfortable to come out, and we'll bring them apples, we'll bring them graham crackers and sweet stuff that we hope they'll like. And the whole idea here is to establish some kind of relationship. We're not hunting, we're just trying to be friendly, say, hey, here's some grub for you, and if you don't mind, we'd like a picture or two. So that's the idea today. So we're going to get the boat fired up and head out yonder that way. So we'll catch you on across the lake. All right, as we get underway, we are going to, of course, have to set up the boat. And where is the boat, you might ask yourself? Well, hold your horses. You're going to find out in just a second. And that is just in case you missed our first video when we tested our equipment. We're using the Blueberry now because the Toyota is in the shop and she's doing just fine. Now we've inflated the boat and parked the car, and we are packed up and ready to go. Now, before we go out, I just want to do a couple of things. And as you can see, as you're looking at the boat, you can kind of see what we're on and what you're getting yourself into. And we also are doing another thing as we take a look around the beautiful area around Baker Lake, and that is we're kind of doing some test camera shots. Now, as I mentioned in the video before, Encounters USA has acquired new equipment, and one of the new equipment things is a DJI gimbal, which allows you to take smoother video. And so, obviously, I have not mastered it yet. What I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to bring my viewers, and of course you don't take much advantage of it on the podcast, but if you're watching on YouTube, what I'm trying to do is perfect camera techniques so that when we're out in the field looking for Bigfoot, aliens, or dogman, we're showing you the best quality video and really letting you get the feeling that you are actually on the scene. So right now I'm doing what is kind of an aerial shot, and this is my first time ever doing it, and so I'm not really perfected at it because a few things have to happen with the gimbal, has to be set the right way, etc., etc. But in time you will see some great shots and as you watch the video, you're also going to see some other really cool features that are included with this gimbal. So right now we're just getting the boat ready to go and inviting you, the viewer and the podcast listener too, to come on board and join the adventure. So what we're doing now is we are getting the electric motor. We're turning it on by pressing a button. And once it's on, we check the power level and looks good. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get in. Now, a couple things you probably saw on the first video, but if you haven't, I'm going to refresh your memory. This is not an outboard motor. It is an electric motor, which means it's very handy and convenient, but it does have some quirks. And one of those quirks is that, well, like any propellered boat, you don't want to drive it in shallow water and run your propeller on the ground. But one thing that you can do with it is you can just go ahead and prop that propeller up, and you can pretty much navigate just a few inches of water depending on the conditions, which is really what I'm doing now. I'm probably in maybe 6 inches of water right there, but I'm able to go ahead and just using a slow speed on the propeller so I don't, whack anything. I'm just going to go ahead and move out into the deeper water, and once I'm out in the deeper water, I will go ahead, set the propeller, set the tiller to a straight angle, basically aim the boat, because what I'm trying to do is, again, I'm riding on 2 pontoons full of air, so it's a very efficient mode of travel if you have something pushing you, like this propeller. So it works great, but one thing that I like to do in order to save time and energy is I don't like to have to shift that propeller back and forth in order to adjust your steering, because you're never going to actually go straight on a boat, as anybody who drives a boat knows that. So the thing that I do, as you can see, is I use one paddle in order to steer the boat, and so that makes it very easy. And my job now is just to sit back and relax and watch the scenery. So in a few minutes, what we're doing right now, I'm going to explain, but right now I'm just testing out the motor, making sure everything's fine. And really, it's been very difficult getting up here, getting set up. I had one problem was that my cable that I used to connect to my battery, it actually snapped and broke, and I had to fix it or I couldn't pump up my boat. And then the next thing that happened is I tripped over a rock and just went, knee first onto a very sharp rock, and it tore up my knee pretty badly. So those things happened before we even got started. So right now I'm just really resting and trying to just go, wow, I can't believe I'm even out here. Look at how great it is. So it really felt great to get back on the boat. Of course, the few mishaps that we did have when we were setting up, from the broken charger on my pump to my, what I will call, wounded knee, those things, of course, were not pleasant, but I couldn't let them get in the way of our mission, and that was to go out and make Bigfoot calls on Baker Lake. So if you are watching on the YouTube channel, you're seeing that we're passing our obstacle, and that obstacle is a series of trees that in the shallow water can really do damage to a boat. But we passed them no problem, and now we are on our way out to our first stopping point. Now I'm going to explain our first stopping point or at least our plan in just a minute, but right now, as I said, I'm going to check out this gimbal again, and I'm going to try to take some shots with it. And as we saw on the first video when we came out here 2 weeks ago, we've got this iPhone 12 Pro Max Frazer Jazzer apparatus, and it really takes some fantastic photos. So I don't want to waste even a minute of today with such great conditions and such great lighting. So I'm just going to go ahead and take a few pictures and really try to capture this moment, because what better way to show you what kind of conditions that we're out in than to show you really high quality video. So I'm using the gimbal, and as you can see, I've kind of done a little bit of a right turn, so I really tapped the tiller a little bit, and that sets me just enough so I'm kind of almost going straight now. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot some video and let you see what it looks like, not from the angle of looking at me, but now we can see what it looks like from the angle of looking from the iPhone 12 Pro Max camera. And let me explain to you that the video that you're looking at with me in it, that's from a 2010 model Sony Handycam. Here is the Handycam. And then the one you see with the iPhone 12 Pro Max, I mean, it almost looks like a black and white TV. And my Handycam is it makes beautiful video. But this camera is really just phenomenal, and I'm taking full advantage of it. So we're cruising over to our destination, and it's going to take us a little bit of time, so we are just shooting some video. And if you watch the first video, I keep flashing back to that, but right over there where you see that thicket of not evergreen trees, but they are trees without leaves without trees without leaves. That's where we were before in the last video. So this time we're going to a different spot, and we're going to show you that on the map in a second. But before we do, now this is the area that we traveled in the last video. So we went from, instead of going left to right, we were going left to right, and we were heading eastward across Baker Lake. So we were going around, see that little peninsula there. We were heading for that. And now we are doing a little bit more of our adjusting. Now the plan, as you can see, is that we were going to go from our starting point at Cochan. As you can see, the lake is very long and narrow, and what we're trying to do is make our way up to what is the northern side of Baker Lake. Now, our destination, as you can see on the map, thank you to Google Earth, is that there is a campground there, and that campground is our first target because, as I said, we are looking for some places where there is human activity, but not human activity now. So that would seem to be our ideal starting point. Now, as you can see from the surrounding area, as we're looking at this aerial view, and as I am crossing the lake and heading for that destination, you have to remember a couple of things. Look at the heavy wooded area. It is very dense forest, and it is really, really inaccessible except by road. I mean, even just walking through it can be really treacherous because there's so much undergrowth and a lot of dead things laying there to trip you up that you have to cross over. So all of those things make it travel very difficult. And so one thing about Baker Lake that you have to understand is that if you're going to be looking for a Sasquatch, you are going to be looking for a waterway. And of course the area is just surrounded by small lakes, but even more so, as we're going to see, and as we've seen, the entire landscape basically dumps water onto Baker Lake. So there are little mini streams and creeks everywhere. And that is one thing that makes Baker Lake very ideal during the off-season for possible Bigfoot activity. And the best way and the, easiest way is, as I'm doing it right now, silently, effortlessly, and doing an amphibious operation. Getting in quietly, getting on the ground, and trying to set up some kind of contact, which is what I'm doing right now. So as I am looking at the area, obviously it is just a fantastic day, and I am really, really enjoying myself. And as you can see from the distance behind me, we've traveled some time and we've traveled some distance, and we have put a little bit of area between ourselves and that dock. And to the right you can see the man-made dam, etc., and to the left that is where the spillway, etc. is. So we are cruising along, and we are actually, if you're looking at the map, we are just about to the point where campgrounds, the word campgrounds is, and we're coming up on that area, and we might be a little bit farther south, but we definitely are somewhere between that little out jutting land and that campground word. Now remember, the lake is empty, so nothing. What you're looking at there is the coastline with the lake full. What I'm looking at is a moonscape with hundreds of yards, in some cases, of just bare ground with nothing but rocks and stumps. So it is it's a quite different view of what I'm looking at than what you're looking at, except that you can't see Mount Baker and the mountains off to the east, the Cascade Range, and those are just looking fantastic today. So what I'm doing now is I am getting out my iPhone, and I'm going to play some Lynyrd Skynyrd, and I believe some Styx. But unfortunately, due to copyright issues, which I was lucky on the last video, you can't listen to them. So instead, we're going to listen to something completely different. Now, just so you understand why I'm driving around Baker Lake with a speaker, You have to understand about the contact that has been made around the Baker Lake area. Now, in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and consult what is known as the BFRO website, and we're going to look at an incident that happened at the Baker Lake Resort along one of these campgrounds. Actually, along the creek at the north end of the area, which is a place that I frequent most often. Here is the episode. My wife, daughter, and I were camping at Baker Lake. It was night. The generator and campfire were out. It is very dark. Can't see your hand in front of your face. We were sleeping when I was awakened by heavy footsteps walking by the tent. The footsteps continued towards the picnic table and stopped. I heard the clanking of silverware, very slight, however. Soon thereafter, the footsteps walked out the other end of the campsite. Definitely was a bipedal creature. Very heavy footsteps that were rapid. It walked with a purpose. It was so dark and so heavily wooded that I'm still amazed at how quickly it moved. I had an opportunity to unzip the tent and grab the flashlight when it paused at the picnic table. But the heavy footsteps, the pitch dark, 3-year-old daughter whom I was thinking about how to protect if necessary, made me pause with fear. I'm absolutely convinced that I heard Bigfoot. I searched in the AM for tracks, but the summer was dry. No soft ground, mud, or anything. Also noticed other items I think are relevant to why I firmly believe this was Bigfoot. The footsteps that I heard crossed a large gravel area. This gravel had rough, jagged edges. When I retraced the path the next morning, I was wearing sneakers. As I walked on the gravel, it made the walking on gravel sound that you would expect to hear if a person were wearing shoes. The noise I heard had no such sound, as if no shoes were being worn. I took my shoes off and attempted to walk on the gravel. No way. Even with summer feet, I could not walk with my bare feet on that gravel. Our friends who were with us had a small dog with them. The dog never barked. The speed at which the footsteps moved, with no flashlight to guide the way in the pitch dark across the gravel, further strengthens my belief at what I heard. Other witnesses? Yes, she heard it. Friend in another tent. But she won't admit it and thinks I'm crazy. We talked briefly the next AM. She heard the same footsteps and small clanking at the picnic table. Time and conditions, 1 to 2 a.m., pitch dark, dry, partly cloudy. Environment, wooded, alongside feeder stream that feeds Baker Lake. Mountains close by. You can be in the middle of nowhere in short time. Now let's listen to our next encounter. Dark figure observed through binoculars during an afternoon on Baker Lake near Swift Creek. June 2014, Whatcom County, Washington. My son, age 31, and I had spent the night sleeping in our truck camper in the Horseshoe Cove campground at Baker Lake, Washington. The next morning, Saturday, June 14th, 2014, we decided to drive up Baker Lake Road to look at the other campgrounds. We pulled into the Swift Creek campground, formerly Baker Lake Resort, and paid for Space 34. We parked our truck in our campsite and then took a walk above the lake shore. We came to an area that had a picnic table above the lake shore. Over the right of us were a few people swimming in the area. As I sat on top of the picnic table with my feet on the bench, My son was over to the left of me, taking close-up pictures of some flowers on the ground, and I was looking across Baker Lake to the other side of the lake with my binoculars. I was looking at the tree line near the shore, directly across from me, left to right. Something caught my eye near a tree. It looked like a head next to one of the trees. I didn't see the whole part of a body going all the way down to the ground. I saw only the upper part of a body near the head, and it seemed to be peeking out from the left side of the tree. My first thought was it was watching the people over to the right of me swimming. I watched it for a few minutes, trying to figure out if it was part of the tree or a head with a face. I watched through my binoculars for a few minutes and sometimes would look from left to right of it and then back at it again. For a few minutes I kept seeing this head next to the tree, and then I looked away and then back at it, and it was gone. That's when I realized that it was a head because it disappeared. If it was part of the tree, it still had to be there. I told my son that I thought I saw a head near a tree, and he didn't pay much attention to what I said. He kept taking pictures of flowers. I can't definitely say it was a Bigfoot because I only saw a head, but a human would probably not be across the lake peeking out from the side of a tree. This didn't look like a human head. I have always had an interest in Bigfoot, and I do believe they exist. Up until now, I haven't seen one. My son and I thought we heard one yelling late at night back in Montana, north of Columbia Falls. Now, as we approach our first destination, and we are reminded of the Bigfoot activity in this area, there is just a little bit of concern that I'm starting to have because as we close in on our intended target area, it seems to be frequented by a number of vehicles and tents, which means what? It means human activity, and that is not going to be conducive to attracting Bigfoot, although we just heard an encounter where it was conducive to attracting Bigfoot. However, these look like government vehicles. The campgrounds are closed, so I don't think this is going to make the best area to go play my loudspeaker in front of somebody's tent with these Bigfoot sounds. So I'm going to change my plan a little bit. But before I do, I'm going to take advantage of some of this really beautiful scenery and take some nice pictures. As I was taking pictures, I couldn't help but think about the incredible geology of the area and the sandbanks and the sediment deposits that were deposited in layers underneath what had been deposited from the river that had flown for thousands, maybe even millions of years through this valley, was at some point probably superseded by an inland sea, which created these mud banks, which you see, these sedimentary kind of sandish rock that you see on the edge of any ocean. So very interesting geography and very interesting geology of the area, but we are on the hunt for Bigfoot, so enough picture taking. We need to land the boat and make up Plan B. The fact that there were people in the area where I wanted to do my research really made me rethink my plans. I was going to have to do something different because I could not go up and blast Bigfoot calls at a campsite of what were probably National Forest Service workers. So realizing that I was going to have to change my plan and be flexible, well, folks, that's all part of looking for Bigfoot, especially at Encounters USA. At this point in time, I was really looking to change my plans almost completely because from what I could tell, it looked as if the lake was almost cut in half, and that I didn't know if I was going to have access to the rest of the lake. Now, the reason that I didn't know this is because, as I said, I came up on the left-hand side of the lake, so I did not have a visual on what was happening on the right-hand side. So at this point in time, I'm convinced that I'm only going to have access to a very small area of the lake, and I'm kind of bummed out about that. So right now I'm getting ready to land the boat and try to figure out if there is some way to navigate or even almost portage my equipment up to the other part of the lake. So that's where I am now, and I'm just looking for a place to land. Now that I've found a suitable landing spot, I am going to go ahead and pull out the iPhone and take a picture just so you can see exactly what it is we're getting ourselves into as we make our landing. Okay, this is not going to be any kind of a functional landing. We're not going to be able to do much research here, but what we are going to do is we are going to regroup and see if we can't find some kind of access to the other side of the lake. Now, this is going to involve me getting off the boat and actually hiking up this hill to look and see if there is a channel of some sort to that side. And fortunately, as I'm walking up, I see a boat, a outboard driven boat, driving through a channel on the other side of the lake. So what a relief. Yes, it is open. There is access. So I'm going to see if I can make a few scouting kind of reconnaissance ventures, and I'm going to see how close I can actually get into that area in the boat. Now, okay, comedy fans, well, now is your chance to see some real slapstick comedy, because now we're going to try to see if we can't get the follow me function to work. And as we're going to see that when one thing goes wrong, everything goes wrong. And the funny thing is, none of this is staged. So let's go ahead and take a look at our local hero. Now, this is our Encounters USA host. Oh, he's trying to get that follow me thing to work, but let me tell you, as I said when I first tried this, no, I didn't say this because I didn't know it, but the gimbal works, the software works, it recognizes a head and shoulders. So if it doesn't see that, it does not know what to shoot at. And we're going to see that more than ever right now as we watch, and the action picks up, and our podcast host gets in and tries to navigate that channel you see right there. The sole intent is to get access as close as possible to our research areas. And also, it would make a nice little place to take a break. So coming back, our podcast host is going to try to navigate this little channel here. But as you can see, he has suddenly hit some shallow area, and he's trying to protect that propeller. So he is putting it in reverse, trying to get out and getting caught in the wind at the same time, making things rather difficult. So it's really looking like it's going to be a rough time for our Bigfoot researcher right now, and you know that this is just part of looking for Bigfoot. So now what we have is, it looks like we're trying to get into that channel still and using the motor to do it. and it looks like we're a little bit more successful this time. We've got access in, but it looks like that was as far as we are going to be able to go. And it looks like our podcast. Please note that that is the campground, and I believe that is Paradise Cove. So in the summertime, when the water level is high, this is all covered with water, and you cannot see this area. And speaking of not seeing the area, here's our podcast host, and he's back. He's got the boat going. He's got the motor out of the water, and it looks like he's just trying to make a landing of some sort right here where this camera is. But it looks like he's dragging his propeller. It looks like he's got into some serious trouble with that wind and then not having any power. So part of our podcast host is out. Nope, he's down. He's in. He is wet. Yes, our podcast host is now soaking wet. He has taken a spill in the water, and he is coming out with the boat behind him. Now, falling in the water like I did really highlighted some of the things that are inherent about looking for Bigfoot or being in the wild in general. And that is there are risks involved in everything. Now, what you saw in the Bigfoot footage, is you will see that as I begin to slip, I make sure I maintain a hold on my boat. And why is that? Because the mud in this area can potentially turn into a quicksand. And so being stuck in that mud and with nothing to hold on to would really put one in danger. So it's always very important to hang on to something when getting off of a watercraft, and of course, always wear a life jacket. Now that we've got the comic relief out of the way, it's time to get back on the boat, and we are going to go and make a channel crossing, and our crossing is going to be to the south side of the lake. Now, right now, I really need to check out this boat. We don't know what has happened when we were over there doing our last little episode, and so we need to make sure that everything is working correctly. That means adjusting the propeller, because one thing you don't want to do is run out into the middle of the lake and then not have any power as the propeller stops spinning because it's not tight enough. So with a few turns of the wrench, we have the nut on the propeller satisfactorily tight, and now it's time to get on the boat and go find some more adventure. So we're going to just kind of bounce out of this little harbor here. And is that darn thing even running? I think I ran all the way to one last time I was out here. I forgot to turn the thing on, so try not to make that mistake again. So keeping my balance, I'm going to just do the old manual row out of this area so that I don't catch my propeller. Now, notice how that wind just pushes this boat like a sail. So it's pretty difficult to maneuver unless you've got some power of some sort. So we've got power, and now we're on our way over to the south side of the lake. Notice that I'm still pretty wet from my spill into the water, and I am having a little bit of fun, but at the same time, I've got some equipment concerns, and let's just take a little break here and see what is going through my mind. So yeah, I'm working up a real thirst, and glad that I brought an ample amount of water with me, because this has turned out to be a lot more work than I thought. Now, the ambient temperature of the air is probably about in the high 60s, low 70s, but when you're doing all this work with clothes on, then you are going to have a little bit of sweat coming out. But fortunately, that spill in the water has kept me cool. So I'm just relaxing as I make my way across the lake. And there I'm making an adjustment to the propeller, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to face the boat into the wind to make sure that I'm using as little energy as possible and not getting my broadside blown by, I don't know if I can say that on Encounters USA, but I am definitely getting pushed by the wind, and I don't want that to happen. So if I canter that propeller just a little bit, then it offsets the force of the wind, and it kind of pushes me in a straight line as long as the wind stays at that level. So what I'm doing actually is I'm crossing into the channel that I saw this boat come out of. And this channel is fairly deep. It also, as I'm looking out onto the other side of the lake, as you'll see in just a minute, that I'm coming onto the real open part of the lake. So that means that if there is wind, then it doesn't have any obstacles or anything to break it. And as you can see from my lovely hairdo, that wind is getting stronger by the second. Now, I just want to caution people, this hairdo is patented and copyrighted. Don't try it at home, basically because it is dangerous. Now, if you go around with a hairstyle like this, you might cause all kinds of problems for you, not only yourself, but for other people. So please, leave the hairstyles you see on Encounters USA to the professionals, and do not, I repeat, do not try them at home. All right, well, we have made our way out into the open water, and as you can tell by the amount of bobbing we're doing up and down, that we are in some really, really beautiful country. But as you can see here from this photo, that is what we are leaving behind. And we're getting out the camera now to take the pictures, and here is some video that you can see of what we're actually leaving behind, and you also get a really good idea of the amount of wind that we're getting into. So with this, the help of our little camera, our iPhone 12 Pro Max camera, now we're looking at the shot of what we're getting into as we cross over onto the south side of the lake. So it's pretty beautiful, but this chop, although it's no problem for the Sea Eagle Paddleski, it could be a problem for the camera I have sitting on a tripod on the front of the boat. I don't want that thing to take a good bounce and bounce my really handy Sony Handycam out of my boat. So I want to be real careful about that. But again, check out these amazing photos. Unbelievable, and really just unmatchable colors. Just unbelievable, really, scenery. You couldn't ask for a better day and better conditions almost. So we are cruising. We've almost made it to the other side of the lake. And at this point in time, as you can see, I'm facing the boat almost straight directly into the wind. And the reason for that, because in any boat, you want to take those waves to the front. Because if you take those waves to the side, especially in this boat, it really will send you at degrees of like 45 degrees, and that's not going to be good for a tripod with an expensive camera sitting on the front of the boat. So as you can see, we have a lovely background in the back. We're quite a ways from our launching point, and our hairstyle is looking phenomenal. But none of that is of concern to me, because right now I need to find a suitable landing spot where we can conduct our research. So I'm doing some minor adjustments with the oar, just facing into the wind, keeping everything straight, and at the very last minute my plan is to turn into the shore. So I'm basically running a parallel line to the shore, looking for that right spot that I can land and I can conduct my research. So it's pretty exciting, and you can see from the mountains behind me, cloudless sky, unbelievable colors. Now, making the crossing to the other side of the lake, or the south side, was a little bit of a concern for me. Now, we'd already had an accident with the knee. I was, of course, soaking wet and I still had a lot of testing of equipment to do. We hadn't done any Bigfoot calls yet. And right now I'm thinking, well, this is a definitely more challenging day than what I thought it was going to be. But we had to continue on, and continue on we did, and we made our crossing. From the mountains behind me, cloudless sky, unbelievable colors. So it's really just a fantastic little ride. We're coming across here, and in just a few minutes we're going to go ahead and make our landing. So the best thing that we can do right now is we just want to move as close or as far as we can up the lake, and the reason for that is there's a possibility we might try, as I'm looking out over the area, there's a possibility we might be able to go check out another research area that may allow us a little bit more access to the lake, or at least to the shoreline where these campgrounds are that I'm trying to get into in order to blast my Bigfoot sounds. So it looks like we are coming up closer to another good photo opportunity, so we can never waste one of those. And it looks like we're going to take some pictures with the phone, and let's see what those pictures look like. So the camera's out and taking pictures of the surroundings. This is looking east, and as you can see on the shoreline on the right there, that is my destination. And behind me there, what you see is a peninsula that you'll see, well, you won't see because it doesn't really look the same on the map, but that is a peninsula sticking out. And so it kind of looks like the other side of the lake, but I just don't want you to get confused. That is actually the same side as this. So what we're doing right now is we are moving in. We are getting ready to land, making some final adjustments to the tiller, because what we want to do is we're trying to avoid these stumps which will catch our propeller, and we want to get into what looks to be a narrow little passageway right up to the shore. So with a few brief adjustments with the paddle and using it as kind of my rudder, then I'm able to just kind of maneuver my way in slowly, and always on the watch out for any roots that will grab the boat or grab my motor. But things look okay. I shut down the motor, and I do my last few yards under the power of my paddle just to save my motor. So here we are now landed, and this looks like it's going to make a pretty good research area for doing our Bigfoot call blasting. Guess what, folks? The Eagle has landed. Now, once I'd set up a beachhead, it was time to start doing operations. The first thing that we wanted to do was we wanted to make our Bigfoot calls. The second thing we wanted to do is we wanted to go up to the shoreline, the original shoreline, and go ahead and leave graham crackers and then get FLIR readings in the forest. So that was the plan, and as we're going to see, sometimes things don't always work out as we expect. Now, with the boat secured, it's time to start operations. So the first thing we need to do is we need to establish this as an area that will be conducive to supporting life for a mammal as large as a Bigfoot. A Bigfoot is going to need lots and lots of fresh drinking water, and here it is. In this stream, which is one of hundreds and hundreds of streams along the lake, you see that the water that would be required for the Bigfoot is definitely here. It is fresh, it is drinkable, and it just looks delicious. But in addition to the water, there's also another form of nutrient here, and that is this algae. Now, this algae, although it probably isn't delicious to eat, it can provide nutrients to things like deer, elk, etc., and they do eat it to sustain themselves. So the algae will contain things like vitamin C, it will contain nutrients and minerals, and it may be something that the Bigfoot like. But definitely for a creature trying to survive in the wild, this offers some form of nutrients. So with that, let's go ahead and begin our call blasting operations. Alright, I'm using the Bigfoot Calls app, and this has a variety of modes. So what I'm doing now is there are growls, there are whoops, there are females. That's not a female, that's a whoop. I believe that's a howl or a call, and I'm going to try the next one with a little bit more volume. And that's a whoop. So you're getting the whoop treatment. And that is the female. That's the female's call. And again the female call. Again the female call. Now I believe we'll try a baby. Yeah, I believe that's a baby. Now this is turned up all the way to 11 on my speaker, so this is not a quiet noise. Now what you're hearing now are knocks, and I'm mixing them up because I've heard from Bigfooters that if you do a succession of knocks followed by one knock, you will be more likely to get a response. So now let's check out the results. Now as you hear the different Bigfoot sounds, try to guess which is which. It sounds like a growl. What do you think? Another growl? So what's next on the menu? Same growl. But and as you're watching on the podcast, you see the camera is now facing the forest where we're trying to attract the creatures. So we've got a little bit of wind. A baby call. A baby call. A baby call. I will try knocking. So, the Bigfoot calls worked great, and now it was time to move up the hill to what is the original shoreline and start doing our FLIR testing. Okay, now that the knocks are done, the howls are finished, the moans and females and babies have all been heard, let's go up into the shoreline, which is actually the wood line, and let's start conducting our operations. Now notice in my hand I am carrying a box of graham crackers. And why would I be doing that? Because as I said, we're going to start to habituate these creatures to our presence. We're not here to actually find one right now, but we would like them to know who we are and what we're about, and we offer some gifts. So based on the story we heard, this is a likely activity area, and we want to establish some kind of a relationship with these creatures if they're there. So we have done our blasting, and right now just putting out the crackers. Now please get a good look of the surrounding vegetation here, because I want you to notice how thick that it is, and I want you to understand how difficult it would be for a person of the size of a human, or even a deer or elk, to be able to move through this. Now, if you're very large, you may have a better ability to move through it, based on the idea of the tank principle, that the more you weigh, the more you can push out of your way. So maybe that's one reason that they like this area, because maybe because of their size and the way they move, they can move around here. So here we are putting out the crackers, and also we're taking some video of this place because we want to document what it looks like, because in just a few minutes we're going to start conducting our operations with the FLIR, and we are going to test its effectiveness in this kind of forest, because we need to know what are its limitations and what are its capacities. So we're going to do that test in a minute, but right now we're just putting out some Bigfoot calls a little bit, just by voice, and we are throwing out the graham crackers just to offer them something to eat. Alright, so I'm going to be doing a couple of things here, and one thing I'm doing right now is I'm on my phone and I'm trying to blast the Bigfoot calls from the speaker, which is on the beach, but the speaker is really far out of distance. It's out of line of sight, so all I can seem to get out of the phone is just the phone speaker. So I don't think that's going to be very effective, and I'm going to switch to another plan. So I spent a few minutes now. I'm trying to get my FLIR and my gimbal to lock together, and this seems to be a problem because although the FLIR and the gimbal, the weight should be compatible, I can't get this to balance on here, so that is going to make it difficult to do my following. So we'll have to figure something out. Now once I got the FLIR to work correctly, I ran into another problem. And that was with the DJI gimbal. It's charging right now, so I don't have it with me, but I will tell you that the FLIR has its own weight, and that weight has to be counterbalanced on the gimbal. So it would not, and also because it's on the end where it runs into the gimbal itself, it was turning out to be a real impossibility to use the FLIR with the gimbal. But what I finally did is I had everything set up, and then I installed the FLIR. And once everything was in the horizontal mode, the FLIR was on, it seemed to work perfectly. And so this is what we found. The FLIR seems to be solved, and so I'm going to go ahead and do my first test. And what I'm going to do, oh no, what's that? It looks like I already saw Bigfoot. Boy, that's sure embarrassing, isn't it? Well, if you're watching on you're listening on podcast, consider yourself lucky, because we just caught the backside of your host, and let's just hope that's mud from the lake, and that's not the result of a bad diet or a Bigfoot sighting. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going back into the forest because I want to show you the path that I'm going to take when I use the FLIR. Now hopefully I've got the FLIR working well enough that I'll be able to duplicate this route and have the FLIR pick me up. Now I don't want to duplicate falling over that log there, but everything else I'm going to try to duplicate as closely as possible. So there you go, that was the real life shot. Now for the FLIR. Now the first thing you're going to notice as you're watching this footage is you'll notice that I have an outline. Now, unlike previous versions of FLIR, you can actually get a picture of the subject with your thing. Now, I shouldn't say thing, but with your thermal imaging. So I just want to point out now that for people that are watching saying, wait a minute, that doesn't look like mine, there are a number of palettes that you can pick. I just randomly chose this one because it does look a little differently. Normally, I would be in a yellow mode. Now, at this point right now, I am about 20 to 30 yards into the thicket of the forest there. Now, as you can see, I am sharing the ambient temperature a little bit warmer. I'm a little bit lighter, but you can see me definitely that I am a human being and I have arms, and now I have reached about 30 to 40 yards. I'm turning around and I'm looking back. So you can definitely make out that there is a person standing back there. So anybody who is watching this and is interested in this kind of technology, now remember, this is during the daylight. You're not going to get this at night because you can't see the image. But if you were to capture something on this imaging, this thermal imaging, that's what you're going to get during the daylight. Now at night, what you're going to get is a very distinct signature, which would be, in this case with this palette, it would be a bright red, and it would be surrounded by yellow, because the yellow represents something cold. So as you can see, that test went out to about 40 to 50 yards, and it really looked to be quite successful. Now, one thing that we seem to be missing in these shots is the temperature readings. That the last time I was out here, I took these photos. Now, this is the normal photo mode, and you can see that it shows us the temperature at about 3 degrees Celsius, and I believe that's also showing us the time. Then in this other shot we have here, this is switching over to the FLIR, and this is the normal mode. Now remember, this is not, this is all selectable from a palette, but that's not the mode that I use. So most people you would be seeing an image that looks something like this, and the warm image would be that purplish color. So I just want to point that out to you, and I just want you to understand why my images look a little bit differently. All right, now there was one other objective I had in coming out here. Now, with our Bigfoot Calls app, with our FLIR tested, with the gimbal working, everything seemed to be a success. So I just wanted to do one more thing, and that was to go through the different modes on the DJI gimbal to show you, my viewers, and if you're listening on the podcast, to show you also, or explain to you what wonderful photos I'll be providing for you on Encounters USA when we're out in the field. So just check out these amazing photos. I wanted to go through the different modes on our gimbal, and I wanted to take a few pictures, use the panorama, and get some different kind of shots with the gimbal. So now is time, I thought, to have a little bit of fun, taking some selfies and taking some panorama shots of the area before we get back on the boat and go for another spin and see if we can't go find some other areas to investigate as far as research goes. So still trying to get the follow me thing to work. Not successful at it that time. And there I am. And I am being followed by the camera. So that is just super duper. And I've got that thing. I've almost think I've got it to work now. And it looks like my pants are, thank goodness, they seem to be a little bit cleaner. So that's always good news. And we'll have to do some tests when we get back home. So now we are putting the camera through some of its final paces. And we're going to try to do a follow me thing on the boat. Now, these are hardly ever successful, and as you saw before, now what would be ideal at this point in time would it be to play some nice music and let you just enjoy these amazing photographs. But the fact of the matter is, this is a podcast as well as a YouTube channel, so that means that we need to have some kind of audio going on all the time, because the people on the podcast are going to go, hey, what the heck is going on there? So right now, if you are watching on the YouTube channel, you are seeing some amazing video of some of the streams that are coming out of our research area. And now you are seeing kind of what I call an aerial shot, and that is where I use the gimbal in it's a different mode, but I'm trying to get used to this. Now here I am in what is called a tilt lock, and I'm trying to get a slow motion picture of the water, and as you can see, it works out pretty darn well. So this is one of the kind of shots that you're going to be seeing when you watch Encounters USA videos, because we are taking this Bigfoot research thing to the next level. We are going to have high quality images, and we're going to have video that you are going to love. And I think this is one example that pretty much speaks for itself. So we're looking at what is the shoreline of Baker Lake in the late afternoon sun, and with the shimmering on the water, it really looks like diamonds dancing. And if you're listening on the podcast, you really have to check this out. It is really just some amazing footage. Now, as I said, I'm doing some different kinds of shots, testing them out, and I'm trying to do this pan tilt thing, I believe, where I keep the tilt of the camera at one angle, and then I raise the camera slowly, and that offers a really fine panorama view. So I'm trying to do that right now, and I'm just going through it kind of slowly, and it seems to be working out really rather well. Now, if you watch my video from the last time I was up here, I was not shooting in 4K. Now I am shooting in 4K, so please be cognizant of that. Now, as we rise up, look at that shot of Mount Baker across the lake and the stumps in the foreground. Don't they really contrast with those grays of the stumps, and then the green, the dark green, and then the amazing white of the snow-covered Mount Baker. And this year, folks, we have got an amazing snowpack still up there in April, because the temperatures just haven't dropped enough for that snow to melt. So this year has just been amazing for photography, and today was no exception. Look at those colors as we swing around to the shoreline, and this is just kind of a sweeping panorama kind of video shot. We are able to see just what an amazing landscape that Baker Lake is, and the Baker Lake National Forest contains. And here we are looking back at the forest where we were doing our research, and as you can see, it is really just some amazing footage, and we are really lucky to be able to have caught this on a day like today. Now that I had run my tests, done my panorama shots, and seen what my equipment was capable of, I had a little bit of time, and I wanted to cross the lake again back to the north side, because there's a lot of terrain and area there that without a drone or an aerial shot, I don't know what is there, and I don't know what I can access in the boat. So I decided to make a run back across the lake to the north side and see what was there. And this is what we found. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to get our selfies and get our final shots together, and we are going to pick up and move out and head across the lake to our next destination. So let's get on the boat and let's go have just a little bit more fun. As I pack up the boat and get ready for the next leg of our adventure, everything seems to be working okay. And so we are just going to push the boat out, keep that propeller out of the mud, and just kind of drift on out until we can get past those stumps, because we don't know what's underneath and they can be dangerous. So we are just kind of easing onto the tiller there and giving her a little bit of power, and now we're kind of pushing our way out into the open lake. And once we're out into the open lake, we're going to go ahead, take a seat, and we are going to push over or switch over into our bow cam. So here we are looking at the bow cam, and what a beautiful shot of Mount Baker right ahead of us. So now our next objective is to drive across the lake, and although you can't see it yet, there's a channel there on the right. We're going to move our way into it and see what is up there. Now, the reason that we want to go in and see what's there is when the lake is full, it is possible to go in quite a ways. Now, again, this is a campground, so this is one of the objective areas we're looking for. It qualifies as a place that might have some kind of Bigfoot activity based on the fact that there are no people there now, but there are people there. So, as we cruise across the lake, we are looking at Mount Baker, and we are noticing that it is a little bit windy, but not too bad. And it is getting to be late afternoon on the lake, and of course you're always going to get a little bit of late afternoon chop, but nothing that we can't handle. So we're cruising across, and we are really enjoying the scenery. And as we go across now, we are going to listen to just one more account of a Bigfoot encounter here in the Mount Baker area. Year 2004, season summer, month June, date 15th, state Washington, county Skagit, nearest town Concrete, nearest road Baker Lake Road. Observed, I was camping near Baker Lake in the Baker Snoqualmie National Forest. I had gone for a drive down the main road near the campground. I turned out of the Shannon Creek campground exit back onto the main road. At the stop sign, just before I turned, I happened to look up the hill across from the sign and spotted the Bigfoot. He was about 50 feet from me, slightly up the hill. All I saw was the back, shoulders, hips, and top of buttocks. It was still and had its back to me. The hair color was a lighter shade of red and sparse. I could see the muscles beneath the hair. I turned the corner and drove down the road, not wanting to disturb it. I've gone back to the same spot since then, looking to see if there is anything I could have ever mistaken for a Bigfoot. There is not. Also noticed no other witnesses, no other stories, no. Follow-up investigation report by BFRO investigator Rick Hedgeberg. I spoke with the witness on 2 occasions for a total of about 1 hour. She is an avid outdoors person and currently leads sea kayaking tours. She makes frequent 1 to 3 day camping trips to Baker Lake in the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest. On this particular day, she was exploring campground roads. On exiting the Shannon Creek campground, she observed a large, fur-covered creature about 50 feet up the hill across from her car. It was facing away, crouching, making a height estimate difficult. Its back and buttocks were exposed, and she particularly particularly noticed the musculature beneath its thin hair. It appeared to be busy, perhaps digging, and alternate muscle contractions were visible in its back. The anatomy of its gluteus muscles and butt crack, quote unquote, were very human-like, different than bear or any large mammal. Her overwhelming first reaction was not to disturb it. After observing for a few seconds, she drove away. On a subsequent trip to the same area, about 2 weeks later, she walked up to the spot to satisfy herself nothing was different from her recollection. Beyond this brushy area is a very thick forest leading steeply up towards Mount Baker. As we near the end of our encounter, we're also coming up on our target area. Now, as you can see a little more clearly, we are approaching this channel that appears to be open, and it will allow us some access. What allowance of access it's going to give us, we don't know. But the only thing we can do is cruise on over here and find out for sure. So the bow cam is working great, but as we get closer over to the other side of the lake, we can see that the wind is picking up a little bit and bouncing that bow cam a little bit, but amazingly the stabilization in that Sony Handycam is working overtime and keeping it smooth. So you get a smooth ride up there on the bow. And I'm back there in the rear of the boat, manning the tiller and doing the navigating. All right, so we are going to make a round turn. There's a pretty shallow edge here. We don't want to hit that, so we're going to round the turn out a little bit, and then we're going to flip a Louie, and we're going to move into this open area. Now, I believe, I'm never right about these things, but I believe this is Paradise Cove during the summertime, and we're going to have to get these things ironed out before editing, but I believe this is the entrance to Paradise Cove. And in the summer, when the lake is at its maximum, it is really just a beautiful area to be in, and you can really get a lot of access. Now, as the wind begins to pick up and hit my microphone straight on and cause a little bit of noise, we can see as we get closer to what I was hoping would be some kind of a channel, because now when the lake is full, you can go ahead and go all the way back where those trees are. There's camping on both sides, and back there is a nice rope swing that is really fun to swing out on and jump into the water. So that is all not happening now because the water level of the lake is really low, and I'm really just trying to get as close as I can to see what kind of access it's going to give me. Because what would be ideal is if I can get this boat up into that channel, if there's enough water into it, I can go ahead and do my call blasting right there. That's exactly what I wanted to do. Those are campgrounds. Those are places where a Bigfoot might come scavenging, and those are places where they would be curious to hear these Bigfoot calls. So as I get closer, I'm checking out the level of the water inside. I don't know if you can really see it from the sun, but straight ahead, right off the bow, that is the channel that I'm looking at. But the closer we get from my angle, it really looks like there is no channel there at all, and it really looks to end just right, like within our line of sight. So I really don't see that there is much need for going back any farther, except to see if there are access places. Once I realized that once again we'd run into kind of a dead end, I also realized that this area, which I believe is Paradise Cove, I wanted to come back and do some Bigfoot call blasting right there because it's a ways from the human activity we saw before, and it also allows me access to the shoreline, which is not so far away compared to other spots. So that looked like a promising spot for a future area to come back and do some call blasting. But for now, it was time to turn the boat back and head towards Colchan. It would have been ideal to be able to call blast from a channel back there, but there is no channel. So what we've got to do now is we're going to make a turn, and we are going to go ahead and make our way back across the lake, and we're going to call it a day for our Bigfooting here at Mount Baker. But just because we're calling it a day at Mount Baker doesn't mean that we can't enjoy our ride back to the car and the port at dock, at Colchan. So we are going to put the pedal to the metal. We're going to turn the propeller speed up just a little bit, and we are going to move out smartly and make our way back to the dock. So it's just been an amazing adventure, and it's really been exciting out here on Baker Lake on such a beautiful day. And before we go, let's go ahead and take some last minute video of the side of the lake here and just get an idea of how fascinating everything is when you're out Bigfooting with Encounters USA. So we're coming out to the mouth of this channel here, and when we get out, what we're going to do is we are going to take a right, and that will take us back to the portico, or I keep saying port, the dock at Colchan. Now, one thing that I'm very concerned about is the battery level on all of my devices. All seems to be rather low, and although I have a backup for my recorder, it is on the front of the boat, and I don't really have access to it unless I stop and do it that way, but I'm not going to do that. So I think that my decision here is going to be just let the thing run, and when it runs out, it runs out, and we'll just get whatever video we can from it, and we'll use that for our video. But it is really just an amazing day, and it would just be a shame, I think, to waste even 1 second of this great footage on Baker Lake, where in most, places where you're watching this, you're going to have something is in your way. Something's going to be blocking you, but here, all you have is the nose of the Paddleski, and there you have a boat off in the distance, and nothing else but green lake, green mountains, and snow all around. Really can't ask for much more. Now, as we make our turn here, I think you can get a better idea of the channel that I was looking for earlier and the one that we navigated. Now, we left, there's a little notch there on the left. If you go up a little bit, actually to straight across from where the notch or the nose is pointing, that is where we were landing. It's actually pointing right at the stumps where we tied off. So that's where we came from, and this is where we are. So we're going to make our way back to the right, and see on the right there's a bank there. Well, that's actually the bank where we stopped for our first break, except that bank would have been it would have been on the other side, and closer over to that other campground on the other side of the lake. So that is that's our area of our first stop. And as you can see, what's happening is a really nice effect on the lake is you have the current is being, basically the wind is pushing the water, and the wind is pushing us. So when you have that boat sitting as high up as it does, and it kind of acts as a sail, it really is not good when you're in the wind, but when you are riding with the wind, then it really is great because you really don't have to use hardly any energy to push yourself along. And there is, again, with this electric motor, you're always talking about the law of diminishing returns. If you go too fast with the propeller, you're actually fighting against the current, and you certainly don't want to do that. So we're bouncing around a little bit because we just hit the boat's wake, and this is always a fun time. This is one of my wife's favorite times on the boat, is when she gets to go through the wake of a big boat, especially a large craft. And it's even more fun when we get it broadside and then we get to dip sideways down and almost fall off the boat into the water. So that's great fun, but unfortunately my wife's not here to experience all this today. And what we're going to do now is we are moving our way back to the port, or I said it the third time, we're moving our way back to the dock, but right now we are going to turn up the speed a little bit because we want to get into the dock and we want to end this video before, well, let's say sundown. So let's just turn up the speed and move along. Returning to the dock, I had time, about 20 minutes in fact, to reflect on things that had happened that day. And overall, I found that the mission had been a success. There were some things, though, that did cause me some concern, and that was the accessibility to various locations where I could do my call blasting close enough to the woods. That really seems to be a problem at Baker Lake at this time. The other thing that started to concern me was the fact that my battery level on my phone was getting very low. And as I was going back, my Sony Handycam, it also went dead. So those are two things that you have to be very careful of when you're out doing this. You always have to be mindful of your battery life in your devices. Now, there was no internet in Baker Lake because it's a national forest, but I did not have access to call anybody or whatever when I went back to where they had internet. So I didn't have any way to communicate with my wife and tell her I was okay. So always watch the battery power and always do everything and be as safe as possible. Well, how was that? Did you enjoy it? I know I certainly did, but I'll tell you what, I worked up a big thirst out there on that lake in that sun doing all that work. So when I want a refreshment, all I have to do is drink from my bottle of Books in Hindsight. Born to Read. Yes, we have merchandise here at Encounters USA, all kinds of great, funny, lovely merchandise, and you're probably going to want to get some so people know that you're out looking for Bigfoot, aliens, and Dogman when you're out this summer. But remember what we always say at Encounters USA. If you're out at Baker Lake or wherever you are, wherever you research, always watch your back. Matthew Hines here. Just want to remind you, if you like this kind of content, subscribe to this channel, whether you're listening on podcast or watching on YouTube. Also, go to encountersusa.com for more videos and podcasts, all archived for your convenience. Also, we have a wonderful Encounters USA blog, as well as an Encounters USA paranormal shop for all of your paranormal apparel. So, not only can you watch your back, you can put some of our designs on yours as well. So we'll see you on down the road on Encounters USA.